here near Mount Saint Helens. Took a little hike around a couple of these snowed in viewpoints. The Elk, I think it's Elk Rock viewpoint and Castle Lake viewpoint. Really beautiful today. That cold blast we got around Christmas is over and it's really warm. It's probably up around 50 degrees. We got a lot of snow while we had the cold though, which is nice. Really calm day, not much wind. A little bit of sunlight. It's pretty cloudy. I'm going to set up and paint beautiful Mount Saint Helens from this Castle Lake viewing area. Beautiful snow-covered Mount Saint Helens. I like to visit it once in the summer at least, and once in the winter if I can. I love seeing the life come back to this area. I'm going to get set up and do a quick oil painting. As always, thanks so much for joining me. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Here's the view I'm going to paint. I'll make the mountain the center of interest, so I'll bump it up so that the base of the mountain is on the upper horizontal 1/3 line, and this kind of interesting foreground snow-covered hill with some rocks and trees, I'll put that on the lower 1/3 line, and then the river going through the valley down there. Pretty limited palette here today. Ivory black, Rembrandt cold gray, titanium white, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, transparent oxide brown, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, cad red, cad yellow, Windsor lemon. I think that's more than enough color. I can mix the very grayish greens with my blues and my yellows, and I may not use the black or the gray, but I'll have it here if I need to. Those are nice colors to tone things down on a gray day like today. I've got Artist Turpentine here. I'll use that just initially with the wash. I'll use as little of it as I can because I don't like to breathe the fumes, and then I'll put the cap on it and get the Gamsol out. Got a little bit of liquid in here. I'll add just a little bit of liquid to my color mixes because I like the way it helps the oil to flow, especially on colder days. Now it's not real cold today, but this glass palette will get very cold and it can make the paint kind of hard to move around, so just a little bit of liquid helps with that. Got an 11 by 14 inch oil primed linen panel. This is a Gorilla panel. Pretty nice surface to paint on. Lightweight, easy to hike with. It's got a nice fine tooth. I like the texture. And it's got that oil primed finish that makes the paint easy to move around at first and easy to remove during the turpentine wash. So it works pretty well for my method. I'll start with a small bristle brush and a little bit of alizarin crimson and just sketch the composition I want. This mountain's pretty recognizable, so I want to do a nice job on the drawing of the mountain. Everything else can be pretty rough. I can even leave portions of it unfinished and finish it in the studio. What I'm drawn to today is actually this little tiny bit of cerulean blue clear sky way in the distance, backlighting the purple, really beautiful, subtle purple color of the mountain. The snow on the mountain is a very high value, soft grayish purple. It shifts. There's some portions of the snow that are warmer and some cooler, but overall it's a pretty very subtle shifts in that purple color. And then the rock of the mountain is all again pretty uniform. It's a redder purple toward the top of the mountain and greener purple, if that makes sense, toward the bottom as the pine trees, as the trees start to cover the hills down there. So that's why I'm starting with alizarin crimson to do the sketch, because I think that'll be fine if it peeks through here and there. Once I have the sketch in, then I'll do an overall turpentine wash. I'm going to put a little drop of cerulean blue right here so I remember. That I was drawn to that. Might as well use this to trace the river as well down there. Now I'll get this larger bristle brush out for the wash. As I do the wash, I'll try to leave my drawing pretty much in place, but I don't mind if it gets erased a bit. Now I'm thinking for the turpentine wash, I'll go with a very light burnt sienna overall turpentine wash today to give the scene some warmth, some vibration. In these foreground trees, there's quite a bit of warmth. The tips of the branches are kind of a warm brownish gray. It's hard to describe the color, but it almost looks like it shifts between burnt sienna and alizarin crimson. So I think if I use that burnt sienna in the turpentine wash and then let that peek through for some of the tops of those trees, especially as they go in the distance and they just become a soft blurry mass, that'll look nice. We'll see how it goes. Now I'll take a smaller synthetic brush and just wipe away the lightest lights, mainly the snow on the mountain. Alright, there's the turpentine wash in. Pretty light, pretty fast. Mark Boedge is an artist I follow. He said in one of his tutorials that his turpentine wash is like a light, warm, sloppy watercolor. So, and that describes it pretty well. That's pretty close to what I have here. So I'm going to proceed now to mixing up the colors for the scene. For the sky, I'll use those same colors. A little bit of alizarin crimson, quite a bit of white. For the clouds, I'll start with a little bit of alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna. And as the sky travels higher, as it gets closer to me, I'm going to try to make it feel a little bit warmer, a little bit darker, and give it that atmospheric perspective. But I want the value of the sky to remain about what I have on the panel, so not too much darker than that. That'll give me a way to judge. The scene's going to be pretty high key. I'm going to keep it all pretty high key. But as I get closer, some of the rocks and the foothills down there, the tree-covered foothills down there, will be a little darker than what I have as the darkest dark on my panel now. It's bright enough out that I can hold the knife up and just tilt it away from myself so that it catches some of the ambient light and compare it to the color. So I can see that this is the right hue, but it needs to be just a little lighter. Maybe the shadow, the darkest part of the clouds, this is close. And then as it gets closer to the horizon, this is much too dark, so I need to create a lighter version of this. And I also want to create this little bit of yellow and this little bit of cerulean blue on the horizon. Alright, I've got some colors mixed up now. I got a little bit of grief recently in the comments about spending too much time on mixing my colors, and I'm kind of torn on that because I get a lot of questions about mixing colors, about the colors I use, and it's such a part of my painting process that I think it's worthwhile to tell you about the colors I mix. So let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree. I'm really curious if the people who watch my videos care about the color mixing part, or if they want me to spend more time talking about the painting process. It would help me out. But anyway, here's the colors I mixed. I've got some colors for the clouds. You can see it's very high value compared to the colors for the mountain. This is the snow on the mountain. It's actually a little bit lighter value than the clouds, but pretty darn close. And this is the rock. So as I get closer to the horizon, I'll get lighter. I may even go a hint lighter so that the mountain stands out against the clouds. And I've got that beautiful cerulean, yellowish cerulean blue toward the horizon, and the clouds right around that cerulean blue where they're catching light. It's really a gorgeous effect here in person. I'm not sure it's coming out on the video, but I want to make sure I capture those color notes. The snow on the mountain gets a little more yellow and a little brighter where it's closest to us and catching the sun, the little bit of sun there is today. And then I've got some colors for the kind of scrubby forest and rock, and dirt, mossy covered dirt down there. Gets a little bluer right around the river. I'll just use a little bit of the mountain color for the color of the river for now, just to note its path, or I may just leave what's on the panel and paint it later in the studio. It's a really silverish purple, and it shifts to a silverish kind of gray-green, almost a teal, kind of back and forth whether it's in the shadow or not. And I'll just dip into these same colors for the snow in the foreground as well. I've got a really warm version of the snow, a little bit darker than the highlight of the snow on the mountain here for that foreground hill. And I'll shift into the shadows where the hill tilts down into the shadow. Then I've got a little bit of color mixed up for those foreground leafless deciduous trees, that alizarin crimson gray and burnt sienna gray. I'll just note those for now real quickly. And I've got some colors mixed up for the pine trees as well. So I'm going to move fast. I've got all the colors I think I need mixed up for the whole scene. Oh, these are some shadow colors. They're bluer. The shadow colors on the rock start here. This is the top of the mountain. And then as it gets closer to us, it gets richer and darker. So I've got a bluer value and a browner value and a slightly more warm, redder value. So as it marches closer to us, those shadows become richer, darker, and redder. Less blue, more red. Alright, I'll start out with a large evergreen synthetic brush. Dip into a little bit of Gamsol first just to help the paint flow off the brush. I don't want it sopping, but I do want a little bit worked through the hairs of the brush. Start with the sky and just work my way forward. I'm adding a little bit of this warm gray to the sky color as it travels up to indicate the shadow of the clouds. I'm kind of painting over the intended edge of the mountain so I can paint back into it and get a nice soft edge for the distance. I'm also not covering up every little bit of the underpainting. I like it kind of glowing through. I'm going to switch to a different brush, make sure it's nice and clean, and paint that cerulean blue portion of the sky. Tiny bit of it over here. And there was a nice, beautiful patch of it earlier here. And it was actually reflecting just a little bit on the mountain here, which is interesting. Maybe add it just a little to the edge of the mountain as well, where it's close to that really subtle line. Just for the distant mountains. Most of that out and use that same brush to paint those distant clouds catching the light. Just a little white in there. Soften the edge into that cerulean first. Also add that to the distant mountains. Slight reflection of that I can paint into. And then I'll paint up into the purple clouds as well. Back to bigger purple brush and add a swath of just a little bit of the blended color. Get a nice indication of the gradation. Try to capture what I'm seeing here. white. I'll use this same brush and paint the shadows. The rocks and mountain. See how that looks against. That value I put up there. Trying to leave where the snow is going to go blank, and then I can paint over that easily with the snow white. Trying not to paint every ridge, every shadow. There's too many, I'll never get there. I'm just trying to catch the feeling of it, catch the lay of the terrain. I can see by stepping back that this ridge is too steep. It needed to be flatter. So I'm going to scrape away part of that with my palette knife and then try to correct it with a little paint. As I paint, I'm trying to stay with the pools of color that I mixed earlier to avoid muddying the color and to avoid chasing the light. I find if I mix the colors all in one go, that can help me to avoid chasing the light. As I paint the mountain, I'm trying to turn the form, show how it's turning away from me by shifting the color temperature rather than by shifting value a lot. So as the mountain turns away, it picks up more of the reflected blue of the sky, so I can add more blue. As it turns toward the sunlight, it picks up more yellow, so I can add more yellow. And then the middle, where it's facing me, it seems to be warmest, so I can add just a touch of the alizarin crimson mix. want to keep the foreground pretty rough. The light is changing quickly now, and I don't want to overreact. And I don't want to chase that. Also, the foreground is interesting, but I don't want it to distract from the mountain. The mountain is the center of interest. So I use a large brush, and I go pretty quickly. I just suggest the snow, the trees, the rocks, using the colors that I mixed earlier, even though they don't quite match what I'm seeing now because it's darker, cooler. Well, there's where it ended up. Light's changing quite a bit now. The sun's coming out just a little bit. So as I clean up, I'm gonna take some more photos. Maybe the light will actually hit the mountain, which would be spectacular. I'll take it back to my studio and finish it up, put it out on my website. I left this foreground really rough. I just indicated the color notes and an idea of a composition. I'm not sure I like it. I'll probably scrape it down a bit when I get home, just remove the ridges and then repaint that foreground. A really beautiful day out here on the mountain. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me. I noticed Castle Lake here, so I threw it in as well. I want to tone it down just a bit. I think it needs to be a little darker. It's a little bright at the moment. Maybe just a little bit more ultramarine blue as well. And I need to clean up the snow pattern on the middle ground there. I just kind of threw some snow color in there to make sure I had the value looking right, but I didn't pay too much attention to the patterns. Those are some things I can finish up in the studio. Alright, thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit my website. I sell these little plein air pieces at a reasonable price because I consider them practice. It really makes me happy when someone likes my art enough that they want to hang it in their home. You can also sign up for my newsletter and stay up to date on my new work and shows and get a discount on original art and prints.